Hi, Chris at 308 Sniper here. Today's video is on this RPA Rangemaster, and I want to do a couple of videos on the rifles out there that we've got, some of the ones that we've shot, the meanings behind them, what they are, those sort of things. So I thought I'd start the video on this particular one here, which is a RPA Rangemaster, as I said, with a 16-inch heavy barrel, and we call it the SN3 because of the scope on it. Or the snubby because of the short barrel, but I guess I wanted to start with this rifle because this is probably where it started for me, and I guess for my uncle as well. My uncle was who got me into shooting. I'd left the army, I hadn't really shot for a while. I'd shot the SA-80 in the army, I'd shot a couple of shotguns, stag doos, those sort of things, but I'd never really shot a bolt action rifle, and my uncle was already into shooting. He'd acquired these rifles, a collection of RPA Rangemasters, because he fell in love with them as well. The minute he see them, he just loved them, the way they shot, the way they performed, those sort of things. So I guess it was the same for me really. So he took me out one day and said, you know, I'm going shooting, do you want to come with me, come down the range? So I thought, why not, let's go down there. And there was two rifles that day that he brought out, and this was one of them. So this is so what we call a snubby, and there was another one out there which we call the Hensole, because of the Hensole scope on it, and I think this was really the first one that I shot, and to be honest, at first I loved the rifle. The rifle was spot on. It was knocking out centres all day long. The thing that put me off at first was the scope. I couldn't get on with the scope, and don't get me wrong, the scope is a fantastic scope. The reticle is clear as anything. But it's got a Horus reticle, and I guess for a first time shooter, shooting with a Horus reticle, there's a lot going on in that reticle, so it was a bit confusing at first. You know, there was a lot to see, a lot going on in the picture, but every time I shot the rifle it put a smile on my face, and I guess this is where it started for me. Shooting this and the Hensole RPA Rangemasters was where shooting for me started, where 308 Sniper started. That's got on my love and passion for shooting. You know, I went from there, got my own gun licence, joined my own clubs, joined the clubs with my uncle, and we now regularly go shooting together with a couple of different clubs. And you know, this is one of my favourite rifles. Every time that we go out, we generally take the Rangemasters with us because they are incredibly accurate rifles. So I thought, you know, I want to do a video on some of these rifles, explain what they are, where they come from, try and give you a bit of history and story about them, but show you some of the features and stuff as well. So, as I say, this is an RPA Rangemaster, 16-inch barrel. It's a short, heavy barrel, fluted barrel. I believe the story behind these was that the RPA make a few different variations, different length barrels. I think you can get it in 308, 300 Win Mag. They do a 338 version, the 50 cal version. This is obviously a 308 or 762 version. And I think the story behind these was the 16-inch barrel was built for the well, was one of the ones they produced, but I believe it's because it was for the Dutch police or Dutch special police for their sniping unit. And this was the one that they used because of the nice short barrel. Let's take the bolt out. Once the stock is folded in, it becomes an incredibly short little rifle. So not that you'd shoot in this position, but purely for a transportation point of view, it sits in its own little drag bag. They do a drag bag for this rifle, which again we might show in a later video, but with it folded here, quite a short little system. I'm not sure on the exact weight on this rifle, but I think on the technical specs the 26-inch barrel one was 7.35 kilos, something like that. So I guess it's going to be a similar sort of weight. I mean, you've got a 10 inches shorter barrel. There's not going to be a huge weight saving there, but you know, maybe 7.2 kilos, something like that. I guess this sort of thing is. So yeah, that's that. RPA are probably famous for a couple of things really, and one of them things is these bolts. They call them the quad light or quad lock. I think it's quad light system with the 4 lugs. Makes it incredibly smooth bolt action. Out of all the rifles that are shot out there, these are probably the smoothest bolts that I think I've come across. You know, there's a couple of different bolt systems where they have 2 lugs, 3 lugs, 4 lugs in this case, you know, where they've got twists on them, that sort of thing. Just got a range flag in here just to show that the rifle is clear. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's an incredibly smooth bolt system on there. It doesn't stick when it gets hot, you know, the rifle gets hot, you put quite a few rounds down it, performs equally as well. So yeah. What else we got on here? I mean, there's so this is a U.S Optics SN3 scope. I'll probably do a video later on about the scopes on their own, because there's, you know, a lot of stuff going on with the scopes. As I say, this has got a Horace reticle, so now that I'm, you know, established a bit, I've got used to the scope. I wouldn't go back from these scopes, to be honest. Phenomenal scope. The Horace reticle means that you can acquire different ranges of targets without mucking around with your elevation, your windage. You can just use the reticle to work your way around. But as I say, I'll probably do a video on that later. We've got a couple of studs on here. Now these aren't standard for RPA, this is something we added on. These studs actually hold on the bullet catcher, so I think we picked these up from the States a few years ago, and we've got them on quite a few of the rifles now. So that just clips in on there, and then every time you pull the bolt back, extract the brass drops off into the bullet catcher, saves it going all over the floor. Keeps it all neat and tidy for you. Plus, you know, if you're reloading your own brass, keeps your brass all tidy as well. You're not going to get any crushed necks or stupid things like that. It's not going to get damaged or trodden on. So they're great. What else we got on here? I mean, yeah, you've got your safety switch here. RPA make their own triggers, from what I understand. The triggers on these are great. Bolt width covered. You get a couple of magazines with the rifles. These are 10 round magazines. To be honest, I think, you know, we put in about 8 rounds each time. 10 rounds is really pushing the spring, so 8 rounds, it's fine, it works a bit better. They're a lot smoother, so yeah, we tend to run 8 at a time. But you know, we've got extra mags and that as well, which, you know, so you can just load them up and crack on. What else you got? I mean, on the back end here, you can adjust the back end of the rifle here, elevation wise, on this little knob, this little turn wheel, quite easy to use. And the shoulder piece here adjusts up and down. There is no adjustable cheek weld on this particular rifle. Now, some rifles do have adjustable cheek welds, Rangemasters don't. I mean, I guess from a military application, military use, you know, they don't want all bells and whistles, they don't want stuff moving around, they don't want lots of things that can get broken easy, those sort of things. But in fairness, you don't really need it on this rifle. It's an incredibly comfortable rifle. It works incredibly well. The only thing we've done is put a bit of foam on here, rather than just having the cold metal against your cheek, you know, one thing, and it just makes it a nice softer bit to put your cheek on. But as I say, incredibly comfortable rifle. RPA muzzle brake. I mean, it's quite a small muzzle brake, you know, size ain't everything. It works fantastically well. I mean, there's some big muzzle brakes out there, and there's some small muzzle brakes out there. There's everything in between. This isn't the biggest one in the world, as I say, and you know, they run this on all theirs. But it works so efficiently. Out of all the muzzle brakes out there, again, RPA have really got it tied down with these. They work incredibly well. We've also run suppressor on this as well. We've got a suppressor on there that we fit, and when we've had it with a suppressor on there, we even run subsonic ammunition through this thing, and it works incredibly well. There's probably not a lot of difference between shooting this with the muzzle brake or with a suppressor. I guess the main difference obviously is the noise. The suppressor gives you a much quieter shoot, whereas the muzzle brake here gives it quite a crack. And with this 16-inch barrel, you want to be laying next to someone shooting it, because it does crack quite nicely. When you're behind it, it's fantastic, but the person laying next to it doesn't really think so. But it just shows how well really the muzzle brake works at deploying that extra energy out the way, and stopping it slapping back into your shoulder, which is what it's all about really. So yeah, I guess, you know, for me it's a fantastic rifle. it is what I cut my teeth on really. It's what got us into 308 sniper in the first place. This and as I say, the Hensel, amongst other rifles really, but these were the first two that I ever took out and shot, and I think certainly for my uncle as well, who I shoot with, as many of you know, it is what we fell in love with to start with. It's what started us off. So yeah, hope you've enjoyed the video. If you've got any questions, pop them down below, send us an email, hit like, hit subscribe. If there's anything you want to see, anything more you want to know about these rifles, then give us a shout, let us know, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.